Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Ashtottara Satashri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadvip Dham Ki Jai Ganga Mayi Ki Jai Jamuna Mayi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol, Hare Krishna, and welcome everyone for Srimad Bhagavatam class with His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami and friends. It is Monday, January 29th, 2024 in New York, and we're reading tonight in the third canto, chapter 27, Understanding Material Nature. Towards the end of the chapter, only 2-3 verses left. Maharaj earlier sent me a note saying that he's traveling today. So looking forward eagerly and expectantly to hear everyone's comments, especially tonight. And thank you all for being here. And thank you, Maharaj, for tuning in. And thank you for your note. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And thank you very much, Tulsi Priya, for the Kirtan and the Vrindavan Mangal Arti screen share. Hare Krishna. So, verse 28 through 29 are grouped together here. Single purport. Madbhakta pratibudharto mat prasadena bhuyasa nishreyasam svasam stanam kaivalayakyam madashrayam prapnoti hanjasa dhira svadrisha chinna samshaya yadgatva na nevarteta yogi lingad vinirgame. Translation. My devotee actually becomes self-realized by my unlimited causeless mercy, and thus, when freed from all doubts, he steadily progresses towards his destined abode, which is directly under the protection of my spiritual energy of unadulterated bliss. That is the ultimate perfectional goal of the living entity. After giving up the present material body, the mystic devotee goes to that transcendental abode and never comes back. Purport. Longish purport, 3 big paragraphs. Maybe we'll pause in between them. Actual self-realization means becoming a pure devotee of the Lord. The existence of a devotee implies the function of devotion and the object of devotion. Self-realization ultimately means to understand the personality of Godhead and the living entities, to know the individual self and the reciprocal exchanges of loving service between the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living entity is real self-realization. I'll read that sentence again. Self-realization ultimately means to understand the personality of Godhead and the living entities, to know the individual self and the reciprocal exchanges of loving service between the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living entity is real self-realization. This cannot be attained by the impersonalists or other transcendentalists. They cannot understand the science of devotional service. Devotional service is revealed to the pure devotee by the unlimited causeless mercy of the Lord. This is especially spoken of here by the Lord. Mat prasadena, by my special grace. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Only those who engage in devotional service with love and faith receive the necessary intelligence from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, so that gradually and progressively they can advance to the abode of the Personality of Godhead. Om Ajnana Timirantasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitangs Tang Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitangs Cha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarupyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Mat Bhakta Pratibhudarto Mat Prasadena Bhuyasa Nishreyasang Svasangstanam Kaivalyakyam Madashrayam Prapnoti Hanjasadhira Swadrisha Chinna Sangshayaha Yadgatva Nanivarteta Yogi Linga Dvinirgame. My devotee actually becomes self-realized by my unlimited causeless mercy, and thus, when freed from all doubts, he steadily progresses towards his destined abode, which is directly under the protection of my spiritual energy of unadulterated bliss. That is the ultimate perfectional goal of the living entity. After giving up the present material body, the mystic devotee goes to that transcendental abode and never comes back. One thing is here the use of the word kaivalya akyam or kaivalya akyam. And that word, of course, is translated in different places in different ways. But it essentially means Brahman. It essentially means the spiritual world. Prabhupada uses it it's like a Kaivalya Nath means the master of the transcendental world, means liberation. It's Kaivalya Adi means like liberation or merging. There's that famous verse, Kaivalyam Narakayate, that the pure devotee thinks merging or Kaivalya is like a hellish condition. But there are many other places where Kaivalya doesn't necessarily mean the idea of impersonal merging. It just has several meanings. That is one of them. But it means purely spiritual status. Also means exclusive devotional service. It's translated different ways in different places. And here, he's saying that this perfectional goal is called Kaivalya. So he says actual self-realization means becoming a pure devotee. We were reading about the nature of mixed devotees recently, contrasting them with pure devotees. And it was said in that section that a mixed devotee wants to go back to the spiritual world to serve Krishna there and enjoy eternal life of bliss and knowledge, which for those of us who even wish we were mixed devotees sounds quite elevated. But the difference between a mixed devotee and a pure devotee is that a pure devotee doesn't care where he goes. He just loves Krishna, and that's all. And underneath that heading comes everything else that anyone could ever want. But it's easy, as we'll read also in the next verse, if we get there tonight, for anyone to become a little bit distracted by the byproducts or the perks or the perks of devotional service, like going to the spiritual world, where there are different kinds of liberation. You can have the liberation of being on the same planet of the Lord, being an associate of the Lord, having the same opulence as the Lord, having the same form as the Lord. These are all beyond the imagination of a materialist, but they're all perks. Pure devotee doesn't matter. Either heaven or hell, he'll serve Krishna. And Prabhupada clarifies here, the existence of a devotee implies the function of devotion and the object of devotion. So sometimes the impersonalists will wrongly define bhakti as just devotion without being very clear what the object of devotion is, or even who's devoted and why. But he says here very clearly, the self-realization ultimately means to understand the personality of Godhead and the living entities, to know who we are, who God is, and what the relationship is, and what is the goal. So to understand the Lord and ourselves, that's the actual goal. That's real self-realization, as opposed to artificial self-realization or incomplete, because there are different levels of self-realization. And real, I'm taking it, Prabhupada means here, is the ultimate in self-realization, which cannot be achieved by impersonalists or other transcendentalists that can't understand the devotional service of the Lord, because you can only understand bhakti from the Lord himself or his representative. It says here, right in the verse, and Prabhupada points that out and brings it out in the purport, devotional service is revealed to the pure devotee by the unlimited causeless mercy of the Lord. It's not something we can do ourselves or imagine or achieve without Krishna's mercy somehow or other. It comes from Krishna, and that's how it comes. By my special grace, he says. And then he quotes Bhagavad Gita here, only those who engage in devotional service with love and faith get that dadami buddhi yogam tam yena ma upayanti te. Those people to whom I give that intelligence, those people come to me. And he's careful whom he chooses to reveal that intelligence to, because for many people, he remains covered by the curtain of either illusory energy or the Brahmajyoti, depending on how people are genuinely interested in him. If you see Krishna only as like some transcendental version of Amazon.com where you can get everything you want, then he'll remain that way for you, and you won't be given this necessary intelligence about the real relationship between us and the Lord. So that's one paragraph. Tulsi Priya, go ahead.
Hare Krishna, all glories to the assembled devotees. I was just thinking how Prabhupada, he's always very careful to stress that this, this concept of devotion is directed towards a person. And I remember, there's I've heard it myself, and there's an anecdote that Ravindra Sri Prabhu shares in this regard, but this idea that somehow you can just have devotion and it doesn't have to be directed towards the supreme person, like you can channel your devotion to your child or to your wife or your husband or whatever, and that devotion is sort of like, I don't know, developing you spiritually. I'm not sure exactly how, but there's no reference to the supreme personality of Godhead. In other words, we can have loving relationships with other living entities, but there has to be, we have to see them in connection with Krishna. And Ravindra Sri Prabhu tells the story of some old Buddhist woman who thought she had a relic of the Buddha. She thought she had the tooth of the Buddha, and she was worshiping it, not knowing that in reality it was the tooth of a dog. And according to the story that's told, by her devotion, this tooth began to glow, like it became holy or something. So the idea is that, simply by our devotion, we make things sacred. And that's not Prabhupada's mood at all. He's like, no, you worship the supreme personality of Godhead, and if you have devotion for anything else, it's in correct connection with Krishna. So I just appreciate his personalism and the encompassing exclusivity. In other words, not exclusivity, inclusivity. Nobody's really excluded from our affection, but it always has to be in connection with Krishna.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. Yeah, there's a process. There's a standard process, which if you follow, has standard results. You can't just worship anything and expect to get the same result. There's bhakti, bhakta, and Bhagavan. That's the proper understanding. Saraswati Mata says, Pranams, it's stated here that the Lord's internal energy directly protects a devotee's spiritual progress towards perfection. So at which point or stage does the external energy, Maya's power, stop and the internal energy permanently take over? Because we know there can be setbacks in one's spiritual life despite seeing so much progress. My initial thought on that is that it depends on how steady our own bhakti is. If we're anishtita, if we're not quite fixed, we're thinking of Krishna so much and then distracted by Maya so much, then it's pretty clear cut. As we approach Krishna, Krishna deals with us. So if we're fixed, then we're under the protection of the Lord's energy. We may not be necessarily 100% pure devotees, but if we're acting as pure devotees, acting under the guidance of pure devotees, without getting distracted, then it's as good as, it's like the example of the gold-plated box. It's for all intents and purposes. And so the real measure of that, or the test of it, comes down to, or it can come down to, it's a very portable process of self-adjudication in this regard, is when we're chanting our japa, that if we're really paying attention, we'll be having a different experience than if we're distracted all the time. But our job is to constantly be bringing the mind back, because it's going to be distracted until we reach that stage. That question may be answered in other ways also, but that's my initial thought on that. We do see setbacks because of our own lack of focus. Maharaj says, prema. Bharat Maharaj fell even from bhava. So there you go. Once we have achieved prema, you're home free. I'm gonna, somebody's mic is on here. Okay. Devi's child asks there, but didn't Krishna say that he comes in any form in which the devotee is worshiping him? That's in relation to what now? I want to make sure I know where that question is coming from.
I think he was saying that I think he's responding to my comment that, we think if we love somebody else that devotion is somehow sacred or it's indirect, if we love somebody if we love somebody else we're loving God. So he's saying, doesn't Krishna say that he comes in any form that the devotee is worshiping him? He can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's how I'm taking it.
Yes. Well, he also says, Yanti Deva Vrita Devan Pitrin Yanti Patri Vritaha. The devotee may be worshiping Krishna in his form as some demigod or as some forefather, depending on that person's faith. But ultimately, he's an individual, a distinct individual person. Maharaj, is there something you'd like to care to add to that via chat? Maharaj is traveling today, for those of you tuning in late. Okay. So then, Saraswati Mata, is that satisfactory? Is there more to the question that you wanted to have clarified before we move on to the next paragraph? Moving on to the next paragraph.
I wanted to add something.
Yes, please.
When you mentioned, you did mention Bharat Maharaj, right?
Maharaj mentioned Bharat
Oh,
Maharaj.
Maharaj mentioned Bharat Maharaj. Yeah, so, here's somebody who's like a very, very elevated devotee, and yet he was distracted by this deer, and it was certainly an interruption to his spiritual life. But the thing is that he was so. I mean, I don't remember the pastime so well right now, but is it ever said anywhere in the pastime that he was, his affection for this deer was as, a part and parcel of Krishna, that he's like, oh, let me worship Krishna through this baby deer? No. And so I think I think it's very difficult I mean, how can you see another living entity and think, unless you're specifically guided in that way to see other living entities as part and parcel of Krishna, you have to be very advanced already to see them that way. But ordinarily, even for devotees, it's like we have husbands, wives, children, and there's all kinds of things that happen, and we forget. We forget that this person is connected to us through Krishna. You get mad at your husband, your child goes off and becomes, a drug addict or a criminal, and that causes you suffering because your attention is not on the Krishna part, it's on the related to me part, that this is my husband, my child, my this, my that. And so you have to be exceedingly advanced to love someone else and remember all the time that relationship is because of Krishna. Otherwise, it's so easy to get distracted. I mean, if it happened to Bharat Maharaj, then it can happen to any of us.
Yes. Thank you for that.
There's a comment
Devi,
from, yeah.
Yeah, you want to read it?
I'll read it. If he has prema, does it matter the physical form by which he is worshipping Krishna? For him, there is no more difference between that form and the form of Krishna we are familiar with, because now he only sees Krishna. Well, if that's what he sees, if he sees Krishna, then fine. But I mean, I think the point I was making before is that Maharaj wasn't seeing Krishna in that baby deer. And, if my husband who, was married to me in front of the deities, if I'm not seeing him at every moment as Krishna's servant, Krishna's devotee, and I become attached or distracted by him as a as something separate, then how is that? It may be a different physical form, but I'm not seeing him as Krishna. So that's the point: is that, are you seeing it as Krishna? And if you're going to see it as Krishna, why not see Krishna as he in his original form? What is? So he says, right. Well, he says Bharat Maharaj only saw a helpless deer, not Krishna. Maybe he should have seen Krishna in that deer. Well, yeah, that's the point. We don't see Krishna in the deer. We don't see Krishna. You have to, but how do you see Krishna in everyone unless you see Krishna as himself first? You have to understand Krishna as he is, as he, so to speak, sees himself. How as he presents himself as the original supreme person. And then when you get that, then you can see him in others. It seems easier to see him in others and not do it the other way around. You try to see him in different jivas in the hopes that maybe you see him as he is originally. Does that make sense?
One thing that occurs to me in the example of Bharat Maharaj, who's coming up here a lot, is that Prabhupada mentions in one of the purports during that section of the Bhagavatam that the real crux of his fall down, if you want to call it a fall down, was that he became attached to the deer, but then he didn't try to reconcile that attachment with his spiritual master. He just kind of he went off in his own train of thought, his own program, without reference to what his guru might have said as a result of him taking in a pet.
Yeah, we all do that. We get carried away.
Yeah.
We get our own idea, and then without confirming it with the spiritual master, we get swept away with that idea, even though we start maybe with the best of intentions.
Yeah. So pet ownership has its potential hazards. Saraswati Mata says, Bharat Maharaj saw himself as the actual protector. Yes. Instead of knowing Krishna as the protector in every circumstance. Yes. Thank you for the clear answer. It seems the final goal of achieving prema can seem so unattainable and beyond reach for many because of the extreme challenges Maya can throw at us. We don't want to become hopeless either. No, it's very clear that I'll read the verse again. My devotee actually becomes self-realized by my unlimited causeless mercy, and thus, when freed from all doubts, he steadily progresses towards his destined abode, which is directly under the protection of my spiritual energy. So we have more to read in this purport. Let's go on and see what Prabhupada might say further about this idea of protection. First, Tulsi Priya says, we do what we can do, and Krishna carries what we lack. But how many of us are doing what we can do? Yes. Nishreyasa means the ultimate destination. Svasangstana indicates that the impersonalists have no particular place to stay. The impersonalists sacrifice their individuality so that the living spark can merge into the impersonal effulgence emanating from the transcendental body of the Lord. But the devotee has a specific abode. The planets rest in the sunshine, but the sunshine itself has no particular resting place. When one reaches a particular planet, then he has a resting place. The spiritual sky, which is known as Kaivalya, the simply blissful light on all sides. And it is under the protection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 14:27, Brahmanohi pratishtaham. The impersonal Brahman effulgence rests on the body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In other words, the bodily effulgence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is Kaivalya, or impersonal Brahman. In that impersonal effulgence, there are spiritual planets, which are known as Vaikunthas, chief of which is Krishna Loka. Some devotees are elevated to the Vaikuntha planets, and some are elevated to the planet Krishna Loka, according to the desire of the particular devotee. He is offered a particular abode, which is known as Sva Samsthana, his desired destination. By the grace of the Lord, the self-realized devotee, engaged in devotional service, understands his destination even while in the material body. He therefore performs his devotional activities steadily, without doubting, and after quitting his material body, he at once reaches the destination for which he has prepared himself. After reaching that abode, he never comes back to this material world. Hare Krishna. As I was reading this, I was thinking that you may want to take a vacation somewhere, go from one state to another, one country to another. But it's not that you just go to the country. You go and you stay with some friends in that country, or you go to a hotel, or wherever it is. You have some destination that's very specific. So you don't just cross the border and say, okay, this is it. No, there's some activities. Hopefully you've planned for yourself there. Hopefully you've got a place to stay. You don't just go. And the same way for an impersonalist has no place to stay because he hasn't prepared himself. Like Prabhupada says later, he's not prepared. He hasn't read enough of the brochures to know what you can do in Brahman. But because the going to the Brahma Jyoti, there's no activity there. You just hang out. You just kind of shine, and that's not satisfying to the soul. The soul is Jivara Svarupoi, Krishna Nitya Das. It naturally wants to perform some service, and if there's no opportunity for it, ultimately you're going to get bored and come back and try to do something else here in the material world. You have no resting place. Let's see. Devi's child says, why should we restrict Krishna to only one form when he is unlimited and is everything? Yes, who's restricting Krishna to one form? He comes in Advaitam, Achyutam, Anadim, Ananta Rupam. He comes in unlimited forms. Yes, we shouldn't try to restrict Krishna to one form. Yes. As Arjuna saw Krishna in many faces in Krishna's Virat Rupa. True. Tulsi Priya says his original form is unlimited and contains everything. There's no only about it. Arjuna didn't want to see the Virat Rupa. He wanted to see Krishna in his original form. Yes, ultimately. And Devi's child says, aren't we casting doubt on his capability? I guess you mean Krishna's capability to appear to a devotee in a form in which he thinks more appropriate for that particular devotee. Yes, he appears to the devotee in that form that the devotee wants to see him. That's our understanding. Why are we insisting that everyone should worship him in his original form? Some even great devotees. We hear Murari Gupta was a great devotee of Lord Ram, and though he was encouraged to surrender to Krishna, he has sold his head to Lord Ram. So what could he do? So you have to be sensitive that some devotees are going to want to worship the Lord in one form or another. But you have to say that, objectively speaking, Krishna is the original, from whom all other forms come. Saraswati Mata says, stated according to the desire of the particular devotee, he is offered a particular abode. So is that a mixed devotee that goes back to that spiritual abode? or a pure devotee who may refuse that destination? Hmm. Well, Krishna deals with people according to their actual desire. He doesn't just offer a general menu to the devotee. He knows exactly what the devotee needs and wants. So in the case of, say, Gopakumara in Srimad Bhagavatamrita, he visited so many different abodes of the Lord. And not until he reached the abode of Krishna Loka did he actually feel like, all right, this is the place. This is my Lord, the way I can relate to him and feel comfortable and not upset anyone or feel the least bit dissatisfied. Yeah. I see, I see. Sorry to ask this, but I want to know if a mixed devotee can go back to Godhead. I don't know if Maharaj is hearing this conversation, but if he is, I'd certainly love to hear from him on this point. I can just say generally that Krishna says that if you surrender to me, he will protect you from all. You don't have to worry. Masuchaha. Don't hesitate, don't fear. And that yogi namapi sarvesham madgaten antaratmana shraddhavan bhajate yomam. It seems to me that if you are fixed in your goal of serving Krishna, serving Krishna's devotees, that where else are you going to go except where Krishna is? So, yeah, that's a good point Tulsi Priya brings up. Does a mixed devotee want to go back to Godhead? Mixed means you want something else besides pure devotional service, doesn't it? And if you want something besides Krishna, then that's what you will get. But the way Prabhupada speaks of it earlier in one of our earlier classes, as I was mentioning earlier in today's meeting, that it's considered mixed. And we had some long discussion on this point too. Mixed, if you want to go back to the spiritual world, serve Krishna there, where there's good weather and you don't die. Yes, last verse said a mixed devotee has a desire to go back to Godhead. And you can find Prabhupada saying we should want to go back to Godhead, because if you don't want it, you won't get it. Pure devotee doesn't mind where he goes. That's the point that he makes. A pure devotee, wherever he can serve Krishna, that's where he'll go. Everything depends on his pleasing Krishna. That's purity. Uh, Tulsi Priya brought up the idea of mixed devotee in the material sense, that if you have material desires, but wanting to go back to the spiritual world, although Prabhupada does say it's a sign of mixed devotion, I wouldn't categorize that as a material desire. Anyway, you'll see Krishna will sort everyone out according to their desire. That's a fact. Tulsi Priya says, so then, can we say that a mixed devotee's motive is not pure, that that they want to go back out of some personal interest, not purely for Krishna's service? Perhaps, yes. Yeah, yeah, because the motive of a pure devotee is Krishna's service only, end of sentence. That's it. Davy's Child says, is Goloka more important, or prema and unconditional love and service to Krishna more important? Isn't that bhava the real going back to Godhead instead of Goloka?
I'm taking, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, like we were discussing, the real point is that the service is the real thing. Wherever Krishna wants you to go, if you have a service desire to serve, you'll get facility for that. So the destination where you do that service is not important to a pure devotee or someone aspiring for pure devotional service. So whether it's Goloka or whatever it may be, yeah, the real important thing is the service attitude, because that's what is the spiritual world but a place where there's an attitude of service to the Lord prevailing everywhere. And if you don't have that service attitude, certainly you're not ready to go there. So yeah, isn't that bhava the real going back to Godhead instead of Goloka? Sure. I mean, you can be liberated in this very body, as we may read soon. And also Srila Vishwanath has some commentary on that. Yeah. The idea of Goloka kind of seems like a way to trap us in a desire to be free from suffering. Well, we should desire to be free from suffering because that's just a sign of intelligence. If you understand the evils of birth, death, old age, and disease, you're making some progress. Whereas a lot of people just kind of brush those things under the rug or say that, yeah, I'll take the good with the bad. Yeah, fine. You do that. But no, and Goloka is not just simply an idea to trap us. It's the actual abode of Krishna. And it is, in fact, all pervading. So you can't say that, say, for example, our Srila Prabhupada wasn't a permanent resident of Goloka, no matter where he was, whether he was in Kansas City or Portland, Oregon. He was just visiting, just appearing here. Yes, Moray Gupta Prabhu, thank you so much for that. It seemed like Vishnu unmixed Dhruva Maharaj in a moment. Yeah. Yes, that's a classic example of unmixing. Yeah. Davy's Child makes a good point there. Free from suffering or service to Krishna, there can only be one master. Yeah, freedom from suffering. These are the kleshagni. It's one of the effects of pure devotional service. We don't simply desire to be free from suffering. We desire to serve Krishna. And then we may find out that, wait a minute, those pure devotees of Krishna, they're always suffering. They're always in anxiety about Krishna. The gopis are in anxiety about Krishna. His parents are in anxiety. But that's a different thing. So, but yeah, freedom from material suffering, that's the goal of the impersonalists. They want to just make everything shunya. They want to just be free from suffering. So that's certainly a different motive than having the benefit of knowledge of Krishna and the ability to serve Krishna and relate with Krishna and serve his devotees, of which that is, the freedom from suffering is just it's a inconsequential, like liberation itself. It's just like a byproduct. It's a perk. Exactly. Yeah. Davy's Child says if freedom from suffering comes as a side effect of service to Krishna, then it's okay. Otherwise, it's a desire we are putting above Krishna. Yeah. Elsie Priya says, are jivas at all conscious of themselves in the Brahmajyoti, or is that what it means to merge, that one has no self-awareness whatsoever. Well, I wouldn't want to curse you by saying go there and find out, because I wouldn't want you to do that. But we do hear that when you are merged in the Brahmajyoti, let's say, your personality is held in abeyance, meaning it's like you go to the temple and they take your shoes and they put them somewhere else and you're not wearing them. So that's what happens with personality once you're in the Brahmajyoti. It's like you're in a locker. So whether the jivas themselves are conscious of their individuality and are, just like shining and waiting for something exciting to happen, I don't know, and I wouldn't particularly want to find out. Yes, exactly. The jivas must have some self-awareness in Brahmajyoti because they have desires and they fall down. Shall we finish this purport? Or I hear someone typing furiously. But
Sorry,
then
I
you
was.
somehow get lonely, as Prabhupada put it, and then you come down again. So the ego must emerge again. You can't permanently squash the ego just by merging. It's there. But it's it like you say, they get lonely. Let us read this last paragraph in the
No one perceives anything in the from because the idea is to highlight the difference between perceiver perception. The perceiver experience.
Hare Krishna. Maharaj, I'm very sorry to say that your audio is breaking up so much that we could not hear a clear flow of of, uh, of you speaking there, unfortunately. Hare Krishna. Sorry about that. Let's read the last paragraph of this purport and see if we have any more time for discussion. The words lingad vinirgame, which are used here, mean after being freed from the two kinds of material bodies, subtle and gross. The subtle body is made of mind, intelligence, false ego, and contaminated consciousness. And the gross body is made of 5 elements: earth, water, fire, air, and ether. When one is transferred to the spiritual world, he gives up both the subtle and gross bodies of this material world. He enters the spiritual sky in his pure spiritual body and is stationed in one of the spiritual planets. Although the impersonalists also reach that spiritual sky after giving up the subtle and gross material bodies, they are not placed in the spiritual planets. As they desire, they are allowed to merge in the spiritual effulgence emanating from the transcendental body of the Lord. The word svasangstanam is also very significant. As a living entity prepares himself, so he attains his abode. The impersonal Brahman effulgence is offered to the impersonalists, but those who want to associate with the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his transcendental form as Narayan in the Vaikunthas, or with Krishna and Krishna Loka, go to those abodes wherefrom they never return. Prabhupada really focuses on that term svasangstanam in this purport. As a living entity prepares himself, so he attains his abode. So the process we've been given is one of active service, using our senses in the service. Hrishikena, Hrishikeja, Sevanam, Bhakti Ruchyate. You use your senses in the service of the master of the senses. And then, since the self is a network of senses grouped around a center of consciousness, that's natural. We have activity, we have relationships, everything is there. There's nothing lacking. But in this merging business sounds like a very lonely enterprise. But probably, I mean, Krishna lets people be impersonalists. He gives them that it's not an abode, but it's just sort of a state of existence. Yeah. Davy's Child says, somewhere. So where were we originally situated? Because if we were in Goloka, we wouldn't have returned by that verse. Yeah. But still, the living entity has independence, and that independence can be used properly or misused. And apparently we misused it. Saraswati Mata says, during a local Bhagavatam class, we read that some devotees transfer to the spiritual world while still in their material body. Maybe without the need to change a body. Like, for example, we hear that Dhruva Maharaj boarded a Vaikuntha airplane and without having to change his body, apparently. But in that sense, there's nothing material in the spiritual world. So material bodies don't go there. People do. So a material body can be fully spiritualized while the jiva is still within it. And sometimes we hear that that happens. And Tulsi Priya says, it goes back to what you said, the impersonalist has no real destination or activities awaiting them in the spiritual realm. Maybe they're stuck in customs. Yeah. 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 Their itinerary is lacking in detail. All right. All right, Krishna. It's 7:56. And thank you very much, everyone, for being here. Sorry we couldn't hear Maharaj, but he's traveling and hopefully we'll be able to hear him at his next destination. So it's time for kirtan. Tulsi Priya, would you like to nominate our kirtan leader? Or someone can just start chanting. That's fine too. Krishna Kanteya Prabhu, are you there? Able to lead kirtan? Jai.
Can you hear me? You can hear me now, can't you?
Yes, very clearly. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Jayam Vishnu Pad Ramsa, Prabhupada Jagatari Astotara, Satyashri Srimad His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Das Karka Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya, Savior of the world, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Prem Se Kaho, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhar, Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Sri Sri Radha Krishna, Gopal Govinda, Shamakun Radhakun, Giridhar Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees. Jai Sri Guru Enranga Kumaraj Ki Jai.
Jai, Jai. Thank you so much, Krishna Konte Prabhu, and thank you, Tulsi Priya, for the Mangal RT screen share, and thank you, everyone, for being here for Srimad Bhagavatam class. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai,
Jai.
His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami and friends Ki Jai,
Jai.
Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai,
Jai.
Gaur Premanande, Hari
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 Bol.
Bol.
Hopefully we can see everyone on Wednesday, if not sooner. Hare Krishna.
Hare